This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about a couple of clips that I saw. Well, one is a segment from Ben Shapiro, and he's talking to a trans activist in the crowd, and it's like a 5-minute clip, and hopefully Yaf doesn't like ding us for it, but it gets back into that conversation of what is a woman, and it's pretty remarkable that when Matt Walsh's movie came out, that there wasn't some kind of big coalition to get together and say, hey, we need to have a good answer for this because we really are using a circular definition. And I guess, commentary on why I think that is, where people just kind of revert back to this circular definition of what is a woman. And there's just also this other really wild clip that Riley Gaines shared that I want to share with you guys. That's pretty wild. Also, I want to share a snippet of this interview with Candace Owens. She was on well, it was her own show, and so she was interviewing an influencer, a comedian, and a musician about some of her comments that she made regarding the Israel and Gaza and stuff, and what she has said, what she's implied, what she hasn't said, etc. So I would like it's a really interesting interview because I'm curious about all the things that she will and won't say, and it's interesting what she hasn't said. But before, I was made aware of it because of something she did say, and people are dogging her for it. People are really dogging her for it, and I think it's an excellent example of why you should not really read too much into American issues, into what is happening overseas, especially when you're looking back at like she mentions Jim Crow in her comparison. So she gets dogged, and so there's some funny comments dogging on her. So I'm gonna share those and share a couple different other parts of the interview. Another big thing that happened: Kim Reynolds officially endorsed Ron DeSantis yesterday, and so she's now on the campaign trail. We talked about how Trump is not happy about it, and he continues to be not happy about it, but she's not just giving a throwaway endorsement. She's going to go actually commit to try to get people to vote for DeSantis. So I'm going to play a little snippet of an interview they had together and go from there. But before we jump into it, I encourage you guys, go to blacktunes.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktunes.com/donate, because it does cost a stream, cost to run my website, etc. Check out different merch that we have, like this "I'm Not the Victim That You're Looking For" t-shirt, and other things that I have available on the website. You guys can also check out different books that I have available online. I have 17 that are published. Someone asked me, like, I saw a post that I did about abortion today, and they're like, "Oh, this is really good. Have you written anything?" And so I was like, "Yeah." And I posted a link with, like, I've written 17 books, and one particularly on that topic. So they're like, "Oh my gosh, how did I not know?" And I hadn't posted about it, at least on my thread, in a while. You guys hear me mention it every day if you watch it live, but I know everybody gets those notifications. So I don't know what's up with that, but yeah, if you're in Metro Detroit area, I will be at Motor City Comic Con this weekend. So I will be in row H, which is the very, very end of Artist Alley. So if you guys want a book, want a signed book or something like that, I'd be happy to oblige. So come and check out my stuff and check out my sister's booth. She'll be right next to me. So hopefully it'll be a very good, prosperous weekend at Motor City Comic Con. So that's, again, the Metro Detroit area. It's in Novi, to be more specific. Also, what else is going on? My sister has an art showing on December the 12th. I'll also be like at OU for like a Christmas craft show thing. That's I don't remember the date. I'll let you know later. But um, yeah, those are some upcoming stuff where I'll be in the area. So anyway, let's get to it. You guys know that like to start with something a bit humorous, and unfortunately, it's the funny thing is this clip of Candace going around right now. So she was on the show, and I'll just show the clip. Um and it's not that the clip is that funny, but some people have had some responses that are funny. So I have a couple tweets that I want to show you. So gotta share my screen with you really quick. I saw this clip. I have not gotten to this like full part in the interview yet. I've watched a lot of it, and then I'm like, I can't delay my show any longer. But here we go.
My grandfather grew up in a segregated South. And so when I'm walking through Jerusalem and you see, and they say these are the Muslim quarters, this is where the Muslims are allowed to live, that doesn't feel like a bastion of freedom to me. So I guess.
Oh, I don't think it's where they're allowed to live in Jerusalem. I think it's that there's an Armenian quarter. It's not saying the Armenians can only live here. It's that there are communities, just like there's a Jewish community in Jersey here, and there's a Muslim community in here. I don't think,
My grandfather grew up.
So so she went to Jerusalem, and people said, oh, there's the Muslim quarters. And so she's like, oh my gosh, this is where they're making the Muslims live. That's like the Jim Crow South. So that's what's been digging in her brain for however long, because she went there, and it's been with her, this thought that they are segregating in that kind of way. And then he's like, no, that's not where they can only live. It's like there's communities where like Black people live or Hispanics live, and other things like, communities just kind of gather together. That's what it is. Not that they're only allowed to live there. So a bit of an unfortunate clip for her there. And so yeah, someone said, what annoys me about how social justice warriors are silent about the open air prisons in Manhattan and Boston called Little Italy. The locals survive on carbonara, cannoli, and are subject to regular misrepresentation by Martin Scorsese. Someone said, one time I carried some beignets outside the French Quarter and the police seized them from me. So there's lots of comments like this. What are you doing outside the Armenian corner? Candace Owens yells at Kim Kardashian, because she yells at Kim Kardashian all the time. Shame on New Orleans and their segregated French Quarter. I'm I've heard several major American cities still have Chinatowns. When will they be set free? So but yeah, those are not her brightest moment there. But it's unfortunate that that sort of idea has just been burrowed in her brain while she's been thinking about Israel, and it's like they're keeping the Muslims in these, like, I don't know, like, you think what they're doing to them, what they do in China to the Muslims. And so I've noticed a lot of people on the left have used a lot of comparisons to Jim Crow, as she tried to do, and oppression, and they've used slavery. Someone compared Hamas to Harriet Tubman. They're like, oh, would you say the slaves who rebelled or the Harriet Tubman are terrorists for what they did? I'm like, I'm not aware of Harriet Tubman beheading anyone. I've never heard that story in history. I'm not, a historical expert by any means. I mean, I've researched it a bit, I've written historical fiction. That still doesn't make me an expert by any means. I'm it's an area interest, definitely not a historical expert, but that's just never come up in any of my reading. I could be wrong. Like maybe she mass, sexually assaulted people. I don't know. I would assume that didn't happen though. And she's not the same as Moss. But those are the sorts of things that people keep talking about, keep insisting, because they separate so much stuff into this oppressed, oppressor sort of mentality. And an interesting conversation with Candace and let me look at his name again. I know I put it in the summary. Ami Kozak. They're talking about he mentioned like a lot of these people are aligned and they see the Jewish people as white, a part of the like oppressor, oppressive system. And it's just always tracks with that anti-Western ideology, etc. It's not a coincidence that so many of these people coalesce together, and all these coalitions can't last forever. They will butt heads, eventually. Like the Queers for Palestine are gonna collide with the Muslims that are like, nah, we ain't cool with that. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I showed you guys a clip of some there was like an Antifa person, and someone who was there, he was talking to some Muslims, and they mentioned I know I retweeted it. Let me just show you guys, because I don't think I've shown you this yet, but this is funny. This is hilarious. Give me 1 second while I switch my screen here, because this just goes to show you again that these coalitions cannot last. But they are kind of huddled together because they do see them all as victims, but they can't always agree.
This guy is trying to propagate anti-LGBTQ propaganda. He's trying to tell children that they are not allowed to be trans.
Yeah, they're not. Suck your mum, bro. No. Black nail polish on is a man, bro. Stop talking. Stop talking. Some religions, you can't do that. Yeah, you have to respect that decision. But in religion, yeah. LGBTQ. But in some religions they accept that. But in our religion, you can't do that. So we don't agree with your faith. Thank you. What religion are you? What religion are you? Catholic. What are you then? What do you identify yourself as something, my bro? What do you identify as? God? What do you identify as? What do you identify yourself as? Okay. Yeah, you don't listen. Wait, what do you identify yourself as? You don't have to be filming. That's intimidating.
So yeah, they tried to come together for the LGBT, and the Muslims like, nah, we ain't into that stuff. That's against our religion. Yeah, so there's the Queers for you'll find the Queers for Palestine marching, and there was some kind of ungodly, I guess it's all ungodly, but they made like a new unity flag, and they put Palestine in it. I don't even know, like the black brown bit of it seemed to be missing, like that just got thrown out or something, and it was just a monstrosity. So people were doing that, but again, not all these coalitions can coincide, but they try to use a lot of the same narratives. And people have come at me, they're like, you're a brown person. I'm like, I'm not supporting terrorism just because I'm brown. I'm sorry. Like, go away. How insulting are you? I'm like, BLM has always been trash. I'm glad I've always told people it was trash. I'm glad I've never had a good opinion about them. Glad I actually read what they stood for. Glad I actually listened to their interviews. Glad I actually not harassed, but I stalked every hashtag I saw from my friends and in my sphere, and I was like, BLM is not a good organization, and I would start listing all the things that they say that are not good, that are anti-Western values, that are anti Judeo-Christian values, and there's people who are like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew this. I can't support them anymore after, you know, they celebrate paragliders coming into music festivals and murdering people. But hey, the signs were kind of there that they've always been a bit of a like a pro violence to solve the situation. So having those like, this happened to our ancestors here, and relating that to the stuff that's been going on for a long time beyond 1948 is just, it's not quite gonna work. It just quite doesn't work. But I see people are doing it. Unfortunately, Candace did something similar, and believed something that just absolutely wasn't even true, that really defamed Israel in that way. I want to address this comment. You guys, I can't always respond to comments, but someone said they feel like I watch mainstream media and I should believe the opposite of what I'm seeing and hearing. You guys don't know what I watch. Or and I don't actually understand that comment, because a lot of mainstream media is spreading a lot of propaganda and other sorts of things. Was it not the New York Times and Politico and Washington Post and all those folks who ran with the story after the Ministry of Health said that Israel bombed a hospital and killed 500 people? How they even knew it would be 500 people that fast was pretty insane. And they used images from a destroyed building on the covers of Time magazine to say that. And they had, you know, all kinds of images like printed in their newspaper of a building that wasn't even the same building, because in the light of day you could see there was not really that much damage because it hit the parking lot. And by the way, that wasn't even Israel's airstrike that hit it. It was a rocket that had misfired. So I don't even know what I don't know what that means. I mean, I've seen other people kind of say that because they're, I guess, on the side of the Palestinians or whatever, but that's just not the case. I don't sit down and watch cable news every night to get my fill from those guys. That's just not what happens. Oh, they said if you watch mainstream media, so if that comment was directed to me, or if it's just kind of overall, if it's overall, people need to not believe what they see. That's one thing. But I've seen people make those kind of remarks at me particularly, so I just wanted to address it. If that's not what you're particularly meaning toward me, I apologize. If it's a misunderstanding, but I certainly I can't say that I don't look at it to a degree. But the reason, when I worked at the Michigan Republican Party, we would watch CNN all the time, not because we wanted to be necessarily informed by CNN's outlook, but we wanted to know what they were saying, because we could kind of predict what they'd say on Fox News. So it really helped me. Well, I needed to see the clips of what the Democrats and other people were saying, because my job was to basically make, I mean, any kind of graphic in social media, but I made hit pieces. So I needed to say what they were saying on the other channels and stuff. And so I'll see like MSNBC and CNN and all that stuff, but not because of that's who I really want to inform me, or because it's a hobby. It's like work, you know? So I do a lot of reading from all over, you know, but I'm definitely not I don't know. I don't know what impression people are having. Especially because the mainstream, to me at least, has like a kind of skewed perception of in the favor of like Israel doing bad things or aggressive or whatever. So I don't know. I look at comments it's someone said I thought you never looked at comments. I see them filtering in. I need glasses, so from that's why I'm like leaning in close when I have to look. So I don't always want to look bug-eyed or whatever when I'm leaning in to see comments. But sometimes it, like as of right now, it's throwing off the conversation. So I don't always address them a lot. So but I do appreciate people leaving comments and being part of the conversation and stuff. But and I know most of the time people leave comments that really do contribute to the conversation, and are timely, and they're on topic. Sometimes I'll get trolls or whatever, not a lot of times, or and I usually will let them stay unless they're like really disgusting or something. But yeah, I do see the comments, and I do thank you guys in the chat. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. Sorry for getting sidetracked there. So Candace Owens had Ami or Amy, I would think it's probably more like Ami, but on the show. Actually, it's it came on yesterday, and it's titled "Am I Anti-Semitic?" because she wanted to address a lot of criticisms that people had for her, and so they went, and he had beef with her, I guess, in different comments. So they went through the different conversations that they were having, and it's, I think, well worth it to watch it in general. But I'm gonna play a little bit, like 2 different clips, and then move on. Because I did find that it was interesting. So I'm gonna go back here to, I think it was about minute 13 after the ad.
/Candace. And so, but just to move back to the university discussion, there are a lot of people in America that are sitting here going, okay, well, can you answer why Jews are so special? Because as white people in this country on university campuses, we are being taught that we are not allowed to have a voice. We have had to endure exactly what you're talking about, BLM. We've endured much worse than you have because it's in the actual textbooks. We are being told that we are systematically racist, that we are born wrong because of the color of our skin. And if we say anything, we'll lose everything. This is the typical experience on white campuses. So people, this is not whataboutism. This is like actually what we have been fighting for years. So it sort of arrived as, I think, for a lot of Americans, a surprise when they're saying, well, now that it's about Israel, which is something that's overseas, we need to, hand these university professors, we need to do something about this issue. Why weren't we trying to correct course on this issue? Why weren't donors pulling their funding out of these universities? Why weren't these same things being said for these last, I would say, 8 years of rampant BLM, white man can't do anything right, actively being taught in the classrooms? So there are people that are asking that question. Now, I'm not here to answer that question.
That's an answerable question, though, I think. And it's not because anti-white racism is just as evil as anti-Jewish racism to say that, when these groups were saying, when you can get on Twitter within the past few years and say anything you want about white people, that's not to be condoned in the same way as Jews. But look, like white people as a whole, it's very hard to sort of identify what the singular white community is, but there is a identifiable Jewish community that is targeted.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean it's difficult to identify a white community?
I don't know. There's like, as far as a common, culture, religion, and all that, it goes across. It's very broad. So I just think when you're seeing an organized effort to call out discrimination from the Jewish community, it is not to dismiss other forms of BLM's disgusting rhetoric or making excuses for judging people based on race and calling white people oppressors, but you don't see an organized effort to call it out. Both things can be true.
Did you use your voice?
So to wind it back a little bit, so there have been, which we've talked about a lot on the show, and we've talked about Candace's response and Vivek Ramaswamy's response, and I've written articles about it. So there have been employers who have many Jewish, by the way, who said like, we do not want to hire people who are like Hamas apologists who are saying anti-Semitic things. And in the particular case of Harvard, there was a letter that came out, and they said, and this was like before the retaliation strikes with Israel and them going to war and etc. They're like, everything that happened is solely the fault of Israel. So it's not just they're like, we stand with Palestine. It's all these things, the murder, the abuse, the torture, the rape, those things are solely the fault of the people who were the victims. So they're like, okay, we don't want to hire those people. We want to know the names of the students, and we want to blacklist them. And so people like Candace and Vivek have said that's wrong, etc. And Candace has said, I'm so glad I was never on a conservative blacklist, etc. And so that's kind of where this conversation is spawning off from. But to the point of him saying there's not a white identity, and she's like, what do you mean by that? I think that's true, like collectively. And if you're like, what do you mean? It's funny because the left really wants there to be that collection of like a white identity. Because they're trying to paint whiteness as a thing, like whiteness exists and whiteness is bad, and we need to get rid of whiteness in America and this ideology, and we need to reject it, and it makes all these really bad standards, like showing up to work on time and two-parent households or nuclear families. And if you think I'm just pulling that out of nowhere, if you've been with me for a while, you know what I'm about to show you. The Whiteness in America infographic by the African American History Museum. So if you haven't seen this, you can Google this, because I don't know how well you guys can see this on your screen, but the idea of being polite and respecting authority and rational linear thinking, these are things that they said were part of white culture and whiteness in America. So it's one of the most racist documents I've ever seen in my life. I remember telling my cousins about it, and then they're like, oh my gosh, that wasn't a joke? I'm like, nope, not a joke. So go ahead and Google that if you've never seen it before. It's a doozy. So they are trying to make this white identity and just associate it as it just being a very bad thing that is not only that they're saying it's a bad thing, they're also attributing pretty good things to it. And they're trying to say, if you don't have those particular traits, don't expect those people to have those particular traits, because that's a whiteness thing that's been entrenched into the culture. And if I have the mentality of, hey, it really would be good if I liked a man and was attracted to a man who had a good job, they'd be like, but that's just because of whiteness. So if you respect property, if you believe intent matters, those are things that are part of white culture. Like, you're probably like, those are just normal things that we respect in a Western society, right? Or not just a Western society, but just in general. Like, it said stuff like being on time and planning for the future. I'm like, Asians don't do that. Like, it's just a really ridiculous thing, and such inaccurate racism. But the point is that they're trying to tear down having good societal functional kind of standards, because they pair it with this whiteness identity, and therefore it's bad. so it's just a way to seek in kind of more Marxism, communist kind of stuff. So they are trying to impart a white identity into people. But a couple of years ago, who did the survey? There was a according to data, as far as like groups that see like their race being part of their identity, central to their identity, Black people was like really, really high, like high 80s and stuff. But white people was only like 15%. So they don't have a collective white identity. Again, they're trying to make it, but it doesn't really exist. But white people do have like other kind of subculture, not subculture, that's probably not the right phrase, but people are proud to be Polish, people are proud to be Irish, the people are proud to be Italian, other stuff like that, but he'll get to the in a second, but people are channeling Jewish people into being white and they're putting them as the oppressors versus and I can say that because people have said, how dare you stand up for Israel when your ancestors were enslaved by white people? And I'm just like, we're not gonna talk about like the slave trade at all and who was really dominating that. Okay. we just gonna leave that alone. Okay. Muslims never sold any slaves at all. Okay. So weird. But people are so gung-ho about, again, attaching all these kind of racial politics within US history to things that they don't understand, with a history that's very, very long, very, very long. And again, I think it's so weird that people are just like 75 years. I'm like, there wasn't violence and other things happening before 1948. That's just not true. And even not wanting to go beyond 1948, like you can go back to 30 like to like 1200 BC. You don't want to go back that far, do you? You don't even want to go back far enough to understand why it's called Palestine, because the Romans renamed the area Syria Palestina after the Israelites' enemies because they wanted to mock them because that was their land. So anyway, let's keep watching.
And your platform to speak out against anti-white racism as it was happening for these last 4 years, when they were burning down college campuses when white conservatives were coming to speak, when they were, burning people in effigy when white conservatives were coming to speak, when they were marching and they were breaking in, and Antifa was breaking into college campuses, talking about white men always being the oppressor. Did you use your platform to speak out against that?
Well, I didn't quite have a platform as of yet until more recently to be speaking out against it. But again, like, I'm a Jew, and therefore it's unfair to disqualify or invalidate. Like, everyone has subjective things that are more valuable to them. The fact that my family, my community, like, do you love your own children and your own parents more than other people on the street? Yes, and that's perfectly understandable.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the point.
No, it doesn't mean objectively it's not all wrong. And
it is all wrong. But why?
If I was having
let
me finish your question.
Let you
I was having a conversation.
You're right.
If I was having a conversation on a podcast, I've been critical of all this stuff, all the woke nonsense for a really long time, and this double standard. And I think that what you're seeing on college campus now is the culmination of the manifested ideas of the far left idea of oppressor and oppressed, and putting Israel into that lens that Israel is the white settler colonialist power that is the oppressor, and the Palestinians are the necessarily the victim, and therefore anything that they do is virtuous. It's fully consistent with these discussing ideas that have been leveled at what you're talking about. So I think there's an allyship there about talking about judging people not based on immutable characteristics, but as individuals. And I think these ideas are all stemming from the same place. The anti-Semitism of the left is the same hatred towards the West, towards the United States, towards the idea of who we put into the oppressor class justifies not just Hamas atrocities towards Israelis, but the bourgeoisie against the proletariat against the bourgeoisie, excuse me. It justifies all these far left atrocities, and that's what it's coming from. So I want to take a stand against all of that. Now, when it comes close to home for me and people are calling for, and I have family and friends in Israel and people are calling for me, yes, it's going to hit a certain nerve, because that's like someone saying a friend of yours was attacked or a family member was attacked. It's going to hit in a different way. It doesn't make it objectively less wrong, but subjectively, don't invalidate my personal experience just because other people have also had are also a victim to the same problems.
But I'm not invalidating it. I'm actually explaining something, because you went on the attack on me, which we're going to get to your tweet, basically saying that I haven't said enough on behalf of Jews. Well, I'm not Jewish. Okay. So why is it okay that you haven't been using your platform to speak out against white people for the last 4 years, and they've had to endure a bunch of stuff on college campuses, you know, which I have, because my son and my children are half white and half black, and they're going to have to deal with this world of being told that one is a victim and one is the oppressor. So I was passionate about that. I was passionate about the BLM stuff because I'm a Black American. It was my experience. Right. What happened was wrong. Okay. But I didn't then go around and find Jewish people who weren't saying enough and say, well, obviously this is what you must think because you haven't used your platform to say this. You haven't said the right words. That's giving you ownership to my voice, right? I am not.
No, but you are speaking about this issue. So you're coming into this lane to talk about Israel and making commentary and stuff like that. No. So if you were not saying much and I was seeking you out to say, hey, Candace, why aren't you talking about this? You'd have a point, but you are talking about these issues. So
no,
you should be
I actually have not. I actually have not. What I have said is that explicit.
Okay. So she has been talking about these issues, and she's gonna list a couple things that she has addressed particularly, but we already know that she's addressed like the college campus stuff, and has spoken out against people who want to make blacklists. Now my thing about the blacklists are, if employers don't want to employ those people because they're saying terrible things, that's the prerogative of the employers. If they want to forgive them in the future and hire them, that's fine. If they don't want to, that's their prerogative. But it's not just people saying bad things. It's having a total skewed sense of judgment and accountability. Again, they're like, oh, it's Hamas, it's not them, it's not their fault, it's Israel's fault that they did the terrorist attack. That's pretty messed up. That's pretty messed up. So if she's saying, well, I haven't said more on the subject because or you expect me to say more, and I'm Black, I'm not Jewish. So she's turning it around on him. But some of these employers who are like, I'm not hiring these people, are Jewish. Some of these donors that have pulled out are Jewish. These hedge fund managers, law firms and stuff, not all of them, but many of them are Jewish. So, again, I don't think it's unreasonable for them to not want to fool around with these adults. They're college educated adults who've said these heinous things. And if they don't want to associate with these colleges anymore, that's their prerogative. But that's something that she has particularly spoke out against, and doesn't think anybody should create blacklist or whatever. And that's her opinion, but I don't understand why employers don't have every right. I mean, she probably thinks they do have every right to do that, but she thinks it's wrong. And I don't understand why it is wrong. It's your business, who you are incorporating into your business to deal with your other employees, to deal with your clients. You want to make sure that they are of some sound, if they have sound judgment and they're of good character. And these folks going around ripping down posters of kidnapped children, that's just it's really emotional and it's really crazy. I just don't know what's going in people's brains where that, a picture of a kidnapped baby triggers you so much that, and people are recording, and there's this one account on YouTube, is like, Stop Anti-Semitism. And it keeps posting these videos, and then they'll be like, we found them. Now they're fired. That people are holding these people accountable in that sort of way. And yet folks are still doing it. It's really crazy. So if you're an employer, you're probably like, nah, I don't want to support that. I don't want to invite them into something that I've built for them to represent me. Like, a company is very personal personal to the people who built the company, the people who run the company, to employees who put years into it as well. So that's a big issue that I've had with Candace and Vivek and other people who've been against that. And she's also raised questions like, well, why are these people saying something now? Well, she answered the question herself. Like it's people, saying crazy rhetoric and doing all those kinds of things. It's been bad, but if you're Jewish and how these people are saying and what you deem as anti-Semitic stuff, you're like, oh, I don't want to hire them. It's not surprising, is it? It's not surprising, is it? And I also do think it's different, because they're not talking about hypothetical, intense rhetoric. Like if you say death to someone, that's obviously a terrible thing. It's incitement, other stuff like that. It's not good, and I wouldn't want to hire someone who does this stuff anyway. But it's different when there's actual victims in the ground, not even in the ground yet. and they're saying it's the victim's fault. I think that's different. Like if there was, I've made this comparison, if the KKK went and just did like a mass lynching, and then Harvard put out a statement that said, yeah, but it's the black people's fault. How how would we react to that? How would employers react to that? So I don't know if Candace would still be like, no, they should totally not put them on blacklist and should perhaps hire them one day. I don't know if she'd still feel that way. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But I'd like to hear her answer that question.
Explicit calls for genocide, which was stunning to me to see that in Congress, are completely wrong. It is frankly crazy. I have not weighed in on the IDF's response in the same way that I have consistently said through every war, Ukraine and Russia, I don't want to be involved. I have said I don't want to be involved in Israel and Palestine, all these conflicts. My consistency seems to offend people, right? But I haven't made a single tweet or a single comment on IDF's response in Palestine. I haven't said a single thing about that. I have said it is always sad when a child dies. And the lack of humanity that I have seen from both sides has been very troubling for me. But to say that I have to weigh in and suddenly wave an Israeli flag and say things that, because you decide that you get to use my platform because it's personal to you, how is that fair to people? How is that fair? And then to go a step further and to suggest that it might be anti-Semitic, which is basically silence is violence, as a leftist tactic, to me feels very extreme, very extreme.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe it's that you weren't aware to the extent that which you are weighing in when you say the things that you've been saying on Twitter. For instance, even in saying like if a year ago or out of the context of October 7th, you had made that statement about genocide, fair enough. But did you really not think, given the accusations of genocide being leveled against Israel continually by the far left, which is completely nonsensical, when in fact it's the Hamas charter that specifically explicitly calls for the annihilation of Israel and Jews worldwide, and yet they're leveling at the Israel side that they're trying to commit genocide. For you to say a statement like that without any contextualization as to where it's coming from, it's surprising to me that you would be surprised by the response and not thinking it's just a provocation or a contrarian sort of stance.
She's not surprised. She knew she would get that response. It'd be great. She's not dumb. She must have known that she would get a response to the level that she got. I mean, I don't know how extreme it got, but to just throw it out there. And then her response to Dave Rubin, I don't have it pulled up, but Dave Rubin commented under her post and said something about I think just debunking the idea that Israelis are committing genocide, and like posted the numbers of like Palestinians like birth rates just going up and other stuff like that. Genocide is a very specific term. It's a legal term, and it's just not going on. And even with the war, it's just not. It's just it's a phrase that people are throwing around, but it's just not accurate. But anyway, Dave Rubin was like, thank you for condemning Hamas. And then she threw a bit of a hissy fit, I would say. And so she's like, oh, Dave Rubin's like, oh, why won't you condemn Hamas? He's like, I'm not upset. He's like, I thanked you for condemning Hamas, because he's assuming that she must be talking about Hamas committing genocide and their intentions of committing genocide, which are very, it's not coy. Like, it's like, as he said, it's part of the charter. He doesn't push her to clarify the statement. I would have pushed her to just say, like, so would you say that Israel isn't committing genocide? Which, unless they get to that further in the interview, because I've only I've seen a little more than half of it, so unless it's on the tail end, so forgive me if it's there, but in this particular segment, he doesn't press her to do that in this particular section. So I don't buy that she was surprised or didn't know what she was kind of doing with that tweet that she had posted. But I'll also say I'm not trying to throw that accusation at her about her being anti-Semitic. I think people are there's definitely a lot of people saying some anti-Semitic stuff, and I'd be very alarmed if I was Jewish. And man, people are really scared. I got a lot of friends that are really scared, and people are saying some really awful things to them. But I know that people have noted in reference back to her association with Kanye and her not criticizing him, and then they're drawing those kind of like lines to those dots. And I know she didn't want to criticize her friend, but then she'll go and criticize Kim Kardashian every other week over stuff, but not him about, his pro-Hitler comments. So I think that's why people, I don't know, overall kind of find her response a bit sketchy. But I just have beef with particular things that I disagree with. But let me play a little bit more of this and then we'll move on.
I don't think it's a contrarian stance to say that genocide is always wrong, no matter what government is calling for it, especially when it was just a few tweets away from when I stated that what Brian Mast said was wrong and abhorrent and should be condemned. And I still feel that what he said should be condemned. Let's just play the Brian Mast tweet that I was, ranting about, because it's just shocking to hear someone pretend that there are no civilians in Palestine. That's not even a claim that the Israeli government is making. You can argue whether or not.
Quite contrary, we're saying that the civilians in Palestine are being used as windshields by Hamas.
So Brian Mast's statement was extraordinary in that he was the first person to suggest that there were no civilians, and that was insane to me. And I had tweeted leading up to it about Brian Mast and how wrong what he said was, and I literally said that it was genocidal. This is genocidal language that we're starting to see. And I do want, in case people didn't hear what Brian Mast said, which I am being critical of my own government in this circumstance. Let's just roll the clip really quickly so people can hear what he said in Congress.
As a whole, I would encourage the other side to not so lightly throw around the idea of innocent Palestinian civilians, as is frequently said. I don't think we would so lightly throw around the term innocent Nazi civilians during World War II.
I was stunned by that. I thought that was the most despicable thing that I've ever heard. I've never heard anyone in Congress deny the fact that there are obviously innocent Palestinian civilians, there are obviously innocent Israeli civilians. If you want to debate how many innocent civilians are going to be killed when you're fighting terrorism, that's one thing. But when you start using language to suggest that there are none, you are basically setting the grounds to say, if we kill all of them, it doesn't really matter because none of them were innocent. And that is despicable. And
so, Candace said that was the most despicable thing she's ever heard. I've definitely heard people say more despicable things than that, but I kind of need all I've seen in that situation is that little clip that she played, and I'm assuming that's all the clip that she retweeted. Because it'd be weird to just show a little snippet and not show the whole thing that she retweeted, but I'll have to go back and double check. Because I don't think that I'll be generous here on his take. I think his point is moral equivalence thing, which they do get in the back and forth of, and just what he should have asked Candace though is like, if you were in World War II, would you have been like, no, we can't respond the way that we think we need to respond because you don't want to cause X amount of harm to Jewish civilian. To Nazi civilians, to German civilians, or whatever. I think that's the question that they're asking, and I think that he shouldn't have said that, because I don't, obviously that little snippet, whether there's more context or not, doesn't play well. But I think he's talking about the I think moral equivalence to try to deter people from finishing the mission when Hamas wants the same thing that Hitler does. Again, it's in their charter. They do want to eradicate the Jews from the river to the sea is a call of violence, to run them out into the sea. It's they want a Palestine that doesn't have the Jews. Obviously, Israel can't exist as the way that it exists now. They said if there's a ceasefire, they're going to keep firing. And if they do have some kind of ceasefire, which a lot of people are demanding, they're just going to regroup and keep attacking. That's what they're promising. So as far as what Hitler wanted with the extinction of the Jews, that's what Hamas does want. So people who are, justifying Hamas, you're justifying the folks who have similar ideals as Hitler. Bill Maher mentioned so many people were mad at Donald Trump when he was talking about like there's good people on both sides back at Charlottesville, and they were so horrified at the people carrying the tiki torches, and many of these people are now the ones carrying the tiki torches and are the racists. So I'm gonna have to look up more context on that, but it's not a great clip. But I guess I would like he does push her on the moral equivalence thing.
I had to call it out because that's Republican. It's on my side, and it's something that I disagree with. And I just thought it was despicable. Did you?
Can I ask you a question then, and on the subject of like moral equivalence? Because there's been all this sort of temptation, even from good-hearted people, to draw a sort of moral equivalence. Like this is just some cycle of violence, condemning the Hamas terror, but also what the IDF is doing and the civilians dying. It's all just this terrible cycle of violence. Where do you stand on that?
What do you mean? Sorry, if you could just clarify what you mean.
Yeah, do you draw a moral equivalence between what happened on October 7th and what Israel's doing in response?
I wouldn't use the term moral equivalence, but what I would say is that there absolutely should be a debate, a full-throated debate and a conversation about where the line gets drawn. If somebody commits 9/11 and we lose 3,500 people, does that give us the permission to kill 1 million Iraqi civilians like we did? And I think that that's an academic discussion that should be had, and wanting to have that discussion doesn't make somebody, an Islamophobe, or make somebody, a genocidal maniac. It almost is required to have that discussion. These are very serious discussions that should be had. I give pause when people pretend like there is no, like it just doesn't matter if we have to annihilate every single person to avenge 125 people, 1,500 people, whatever, then it's totally fine. That doesn't feel right to me,
Right. Well, in the case of 9/11 that you brought up, I mean, it was a lot more amorphous and unclear who the enemy was, where it was located, who was supporting it. In this case with Israel, it's right next door, and they know that these regimes have been built up by Iran over the years and have continually attacked Israel for decades, and Israel has constantly faced existential threat. It's very clear where Israel's enemies lie and what Israel and who Israel has to fight in order to defend itself. It's not like Israel's making this policy of where do we go, where should we go? Like, we know where this came from. And therefore, I think when we are unclear on the moral difference, then what that risks doing is confusing murder and self-defense, confusing aggression and retaliation. And those are huge dangerous moral mistakes to make. It's tragic what happens in war when innocent people die on both sides, but one has to look at accountability. And all of these people that we mourn for and grieve for when we see these horrific images of war on the Palestinian side and on the Israeli side, all of those people were alive on October 4th, 5th, and 6th. And I think everybody is forgetting that context and forgetting what has brought this on. There was a ceasefire on October 4th, 5th, and 6th. And in Israel, retaliating to defend itself, for some reason, it gets held to this impossible standard. Even when it tells people to leave, when it tries to get people to evacuate, when it drops leaflets, and Hamas terrorists force people to stay, to maximize civilian casualties, to win the narrative of propaganda that the word genocide can get just thrown at Israel amongst the far woke leftist circles and celebrated by people who would be slaughtered by Hamas to begin with. Very strange bedfellows that it creates, but they win the propaganda war their way. I think to make these moral confusions is very, very dangerous.
Well, I think it's dangerous to not have a conversation about where this could lead to, because if you told me that 1,500 Israeli civilians led to World War III, you know, I think we should probably have a conversation about that. And I think when people are asking for that conversation, they're being called anti-Semitic, which is insane. I've seen this with Vivek Ramaswamy. You know, he asked, you know, what is the plan? Okay, you've identified.
So, that it's very fine that people want to ask those questions. I definitely don't want it to evolve into World War III, and people like, oh, I don't want to see any U.S. ships anywhere, etc. Well, they do secure like trade routes and other things like that. I mean, there's good reasons for ships to be out there, but and you know, deterrence and all kinds of different stuff. You know, so I said at the beginning of this stuff popping off, I'm like, it's very possible that this stays contained between like Israel going into Gaza, etc., and you know, other Arab nations not jumping in, us jumping in to help our out. It's very possible. We need some competence. And I'm like, I don't know if we possess that with our leadership, but I don't know. It's not looking to me like it's going to end up in a World War III situation, at least not right now. But but I don't understand why it's so hard to answer the question of like the moral equivalence thing. Like you could just nip that in the bud. And she kind of went on to like not a different conversation, but her other sort of concerns. But you can say, well, it's important for us to have these conversations of how far are we going to go with this. But yeah, absolutely. I think that Israel has a right to defend themselves after what happened, and to try to take out the terrorists who want to make them not exist anymore. I don't see why it's hard for to say that. So I don't know. It's a little weird to me, and I don't want to. I don't get it. I don't get it. I really don't understand. I'm dying, guys. I'm dying to see her and Ben go. I just wonder what's going at behind closed doors. I mean, I really wish that she'd invite Ben on her show or vice versa, so they could chit chat about this a bit, because I'm sure. I know Jeremy Boring replied to one of her tweets before about the college campus thing, but I haven't seen. I don't think Ben has replied to anything that she said, but I can only imagine. And I know when Kanye was saying like the pro-Hitler stuff on and talking about the Jews and other stuff like that, that he didn't really. Maybe he tweeted something, I can't remember, but he didn't really say. I think maybe there was a tweet, but there wasn't really a big exchange, and not a huge one. There might have been a little one, and I heard him talk about it on a podcast. How like he was upset, he was disappointed, and I wished that she had said more. And so I just wonder what's going on behind the scenes, and I wondered what was going on behind the scenes during COVID. Because Ben Shapiro was a very big pro lockdown and pro go get your vax. And Michael Knowles was like never into it. And I'm like, I really want to see some tweets But from everything that I observed, and I was watching them pretty closely, I don't think whatever disagreements they had, they must have just had them behind closed doors if they had those discussions at all. Which I don't begrudge them for if they are having those kind of disputes, keeping them close to the chest. Because I wish Republicans would do that a lot of the time too. I think sometimes you have to like address some stuff publicly, but like local politics, people be saying all kinds of stuff on Facebook and then people put it in the news. I'm like, y'all could have like hashed this out like in a private meeting or something. So I don't begrudge them for keeping stuff close to the chest, but we are aware that they do have differing opinions on different things. If you watch their different shows, if you follow their different threads, you know that they disagree on like the it's not backstage thing that they do. So it wouldn't be so I don't know, crazy to see some kind of I don't know, sit down where they hash out their feelings on the matter and go at it. And I think that would kind of be better than everyone kind of speculating behind the scenes saying, oh, Candace about to get fired, because she's disagreeing with Ben Shapiro and Ben Shapiro is so this and she's saying this. So it's not my company or anything. So they ultimately need to decide what's best for them. But we have eyes and we know how passionate Ben is about this particular issue and how Candace is kind of saying some things that we think that he would definitely find controversial. So I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there that I would like to see some kind of exchange. And Twitter doesn't have to be it. Twitter, I guess Twitter would not, it'd be juicy and we'd be talking about it. We'd be spilling that tea. But a forum like what she's having here with Ami or Amy would be good, to just kind of break down and go through it. And I think there's a lot of things that Ben knows on the subject, obviously that she doesn't know, and go from there. I wonder if they've had any conversations, but I don't know. It would be entertaining at the very least. So again, you guys can go check out more of that interview later. She did say something else that this is kind of where I started to leave off, where I had to join you guys. Where she said something about Jews doing very well in America. I'm just like,
using Israel, the hostility towards Israel is used as the cover for a lot of disgusting, abhorrent behavior and anti-Semitism that you've condemned in terms of ripping down posters, the dehumanization of Israelis and Jews. So what I'm saying to you is there's a moral standard here. We got into World War II also, and World War II was a terrible thing, but we had to defeat the Nazi regime for the sake of humanity. We both, I think, would agree on that.
Yeah.
So to be an isolationist in principle, I mean, I would want a world of trade and prosperity and peace. But if you have regimes that don't believe in that and don't have those values, like Hamas, like Iran, they don't believe in what you believe in, what you and I believe in, coexistence, peace, trade. They don't believe in those things. It's a very different ideology. This is not about a geopolitical dispute between Israel and Palestine. This is about an ideological mission to rid the world of Israel and the Jews. That's what I think people misunderstand.
Yeah, well, Jews live very comfortably in the United States of America, so they're not going to be. I mean, obviously, Jews
lived comfortably in Germany before Germany too. They did. Doctors, lawyers,
I really struggle when people start using, things that have happened in the past that are abhorrent, like slavery, to say that, like, if this doesn't happen, then slavery is going to be back, or if this doesn't happen, then it's going to be the Holocaust too. I think there's a lot more meaningful chatter and discussion that we can have. We don't have to resort to that kind of,
History repeats itself if you forget it. You have to be conscious, and Jews especially. Unfortunately, I'm a grandchild of all four of my grandparents are Holocaust survivors.
So what do you make of the Holocaust survivors?
So they go on to something else from there. But I thought that was a weird exchange, and that's where I'm not gonna play anymore because I still have a bit more to watch myself. But I thought that was a weird thing to kind of bring him like, well, Jews in here are fine, U.S. are doing well. Just I think a lot of Jews, especially like leftist Jews, liberal Jews, celebrity Jews, and not all of them are on the same page with this, but we've talked about different Jews on the left that are just kind of waking up like, oh wow, this coalition of people who I've supported aren't really for me, don't have my back, and don't have the particular compassion that other groups have when something goes down. And there is a really big difference. Like I did a video the other day on TikTok, and I mentioned that and I was replying to a friend of mine who's Jewish, and someone had wrote a comment like, how do you live with yourself being Jewish? And she didn't even say anything in the video. She looked a little upset, but she just buttered some toast and just like, I keep living, and didn't need to even, I think she just wanted to show everyone the comment. And so I did a video encouraging her and stuff. But I also mentioned that when I mentioned Jesse Smollett, and when he claimed that he was attacked, there's an outpouring of people who condemned what happened to him and condemned LGBT, anger and outrage and homophobia and transphobia and all that stuff. And, just such a huge outpouring for him. Now, I always knew that the story was stupid. And if you believed it, I don't know. I know a lot of people like they were emotionally triggered and just felt compelled, but the story never made any sense, right? Never made any sense. But he got a lot of compassion from people, and it wasn't even true. And I mentioned Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace is a race car driver, a black race car driver. And so he claimed that he found a noose, right? And so there was all these race car drivers who stood with him and walked with him, etc., and condemned what happened. They sent the FBI out there. It was like 11 agents or something like that. I'm like, to investigate. Okay. But it was a garage pull, which isn't crazy because it's garage. But he had such compassion for people over that incident. And it's just amazing how many people will be like, I'm standing for you, and it's something that's not even true. And there's all these terrible, horrific things. And the Jewish community, like, it's a small population of the world. And in Israel itself is so small. And so they feel this so deeply. They so many people know people who were killed, lost friends and family. And then they see the world immediately. There was a lot of people who condemned it. Sure. Absolutely. And I think more the internet is crazy. But most people condemn what happened. And for the younger generation, it's very skewed. We're in trouble. But older folks, their perspective is pretty clear on that. But there's people had these rallies even before Israel retaliated. People were saying that, oh, we don't support the violence, but it was justified. So there was comments like that. People had all these rallies, having the rally in the streets. We didn't even talk about what happened. The rally that was in DC where people were doing graffiti at the White House. Someone was like scaling the fence, and they're putting Palestine flags in like the hands of statues and defacing statues and all kinds of different stuff. Just crazy stuff going on. And people like had like red paint, and they splattered hands all over like the White House. And they obviously there's a lot of fingerprints, but I don't think anyone's going to investigate that. Not smart criminals, not a competent government to pursue those sorts of things, because they'll just keep getting worse. And people should have put a stop to it when it was happening in 2020, because people just feel very entitled to keep acting crazy at these sorts of events and stuff, but people see them online, people hear them in their own communities or close to their communities, and they felt safe in the US. And they would hear from their grandparents about how much they had to suffer and how in danger they were, and they'd say things like it could always happen again, and they'd be like, okay, but I'm in America, and then they see all of this aggression, and they hear this aggression from not just people who are Palestinians. And there's a lot of Palestinians who are just like not into it or whatever too, or condemn Hamas, and but they see a lot of people out in the streets, but a lot of them are part of the coalition of like the the Antifa folks, BLM folks, and that rhetoric where it was like no justice, no peace is translating to peace on stolen land, from the river to the sea. Like it's people were saying all the stuff at the same kind of events, and folks who they see it as the oppressed and oppressor, and the same people who were like justifying violence before are justifying violence now. And it does make people wonder, at what point of time am I really not safe? And there are a couple reports of things popping up of people being victims of hate crime. There was that instance of horrific instance where there was a Palestinian a mom and her child who were killed. I think the child was like 6 or something like that. Terrific. And there's instances of Jewish people being murdered. There was a man who was hit with like a loudspeaker at an event the other day, and people crashing their cars into people's houses because they see like Jewish markers or whatever, or flags in their house. People are removing different things from their houses. They're concerned about putting up their menorahs in their windows, and just all kinds of crazy stuff. So the whole, I don't know, shrugging off the Jews do very well in America. Like, don't exaggerate Holocaust. And her comparing it to like people bringing up slavery still exists. Like, will that happen in America? No, but it's definitely not profitable like it was back then. So people find other ways to oppress people. They like the game it's like the same players, they just play a different game, maybe the rules are a little different, but they keep playing. They so no, I'm not worried about slavery in the incarnation that it was before popping up again in the US. And but there's other ways to control people. Who was it? President who's like, I'll have these Negroes voting for me for 100 years, next 100 years. Trying to think. But it's disputed whether that is a real quote, but gosh, someone help me in the comments. What president am I thinking of? What president am I thinking of? I don't know why it's slipping my tongue. Johnson. Hold on. Yeah, it's Johnson. LBJ. Thank you. I don't know why that I talk about all the time. Don't know why he just went popping in my mind. LBJ, they find different ways to like, why fight against people when you can manipulate them into like your agenda? So You know, so no, I'm not worried about that happening in America, but that doesn't mean there's not other sort of terrible injustices going on here or going on in the world. And to think that I don't think that's comparable to the Jewish community's fear of the Holocaust, because they are a very small population of the world. Many of them do live in Israel, and they do live surrounded by neighbors who have attacked them before. And while, you know, there's countries that are like, you know what, they have a right to exist. We're gonna do the Abraham Accords. We're gonna, you know, make some economic alliances, other stuff. That's great, but Hamas still, again, wants what Hitler wanted. And there's a lot of people who are chanting their catchphrase. So and they're like, no, it's just for peace. Like, that's not what it's for. And I think a lot of you know that. Like, we played Rashida Tlaib's video, and she's trying to say, yesterday we did, and she's trying to say, oh no, it's about peace. But in her video, it also says no peace on stolen land. So it's sketchy. It's sketchy. And she's also been associated with some people associated with terrorist groups. So it's just really sketchy. So I didn't like that comment from Candace. Anyway, I talked way too long about this. So I do want to still show two videos. One is a conversation that Ben Shapiro had with a student. Well, not a student. They did not look like a student, but maybe they are. But a trans activist. But the first one I want to show you, this is something that Riley Gaines had showed. Here you go.
You know, the medical terms, what they tell me, you know, my testosterone, you know, being born, you know, without the uterus, you know, being born with internal testicles, those don't make me less a woman. It's just the differences that I was born with, and I embrace them.
Your testicles don't make you less of a woman, bruh. See, if you're gonna embrace your differences, just embrace that you're a man. Just embrace you're a man. Maybe you have different inclinations as a man. Maybe but you're not a woman. You know, there's so much preaching about accept me for who I am. The obvious reply is, but you didn't accept yourself. So why are you trying to sell me on the lie? Why I would prefer if you were living the truth. Not even just the truth, your truth, because your truth is in every cell of your body, bro. You're a man. You're a man. What did your gametes determine, brother? You're a man. Just really, really nuts. Just really, really radical stuff. Anyway, let's play this exchange from Ben Shapiro. He was at a college campus, and they talked about, it got into the what is a woman. And maybe I'll skip forward a bit, so because it is like 6 minutes long, and we are pretty late over. I guess what's another 6 minutes? Okay, we'll just play the whole exchange. We'll play the whole exchange. It's fine. But it's very clear that they still don't have a good answer for what is a woman. And I'm surprised. I'm surprised and not surprised when I ask this question of different people, how many people are still stumped by it. And I don't understand why so many people are still stumped by it when there's a whole darn documentary just stumping people, and not just college kids and not just random people off the street. People who are professionals are stumped by this question on what is a woman, and they can't answer it. You would think there would be some kind of meeting where they'd all have to be like, okay, we can't allow ourselves to look crazy like everyone did on Dr. Phil that day. Like, we need to have a good solid answer for this, and people just have not done it, and they cannot do it, and they can't do it without some kind of circular definition. You'll see that continuing.
There was a time where the word mother exclusively described a woman in relation to her biological offspring, but our definition has since shifted to account for adoption, leaving us with a more social and less biological outlook on motherhood. My question for you is how affirming transgender identity is such a threat to biology when we have clear precedent for similar shifts in language?
Okay, so usually there is a distinction. You can call somebody mother, but then an adopted mother is not going to be insulted when you say biological mother. Right? An adopted mother is not going to say that biological mother is an inappropriate term. The trans movement claims that the term biological female is somehow offensive. The trans movement will claim that female encompasses not biology somehow. It's a bizarrely illogical categorization. So the trans movement is not a threat to biology. Biology is biology. People will continue to reproduce. I mean, some of us. But in any case, the no implication made. But in any case, some people will continue to reproduce. Those reproductive relationships will be almost entirely male or female. The only exceptions would be in vitro or artificial insemination, which will be an extraordinarily tiny percentage of actual inseminations and pregnancies. So biology is not threatened. Truth is threatened. I'm not worried about biology being threatened. If you want to threaten your own biology, I mean, that's your prerogative. But truth, the idea that male refers to a biological category as opposed to an idea that you have in your head that is unverifiable by any sort of objective reality, that is something that nobody who cares about truth should acquiesce to. The entire way that we communicate is through words that have mutually agreed upon definitions. And the definition of a word cannot be an Ouroboros that eats itself. It can't be a woman is anyone who says they are a woman, which is a woman. It's completely circular. That has no definition. If you want to define a category, the category has to have definition. And any attempt to broaden that category out to include things that are clearly not in that category, and in fact, there are only two categories, male and female. They're actually in the other category. That is a fundamental assault on the truth, and nobody should accept that.
In one of your more infamous debates, you said, I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Yes.
My argument is not that terms like biological female or biological male are necessarily offensive. My argument is that you are saying that referring to a trans woman as
biological
a woman or a
male has been
man as a
offensive
man,
to
et cetera,
people,
et cetera,
certainly.
is like inherently offensive or threatens biology. And I'm curious why it's so threatened when there's clear precedent for changing the language.
Again, the term mother does not include father. Every category has to have boundaries. The boundary of female starts at male. And when you start including male in the category of female, you are threatening biological definitions as well as basic truth.
Well, you could say the category of mother starts at conception or, a biological relation to an offspring. But as we know,
but again, the idea that you are, but the idea of motherhood being the act of mothering, right? And that is a female. A female does the act of mothering. You can say that a female who does the act of mothering is a mother, but you also have a special category called biological motherhood. I'm not going to.
So, just to clarify that there are trans people who are offended by biological female, those terms. There's one trans activist named Kelly, and I've played his videos before and commented on his videos before. Kelly started getting some recognition on the right because he started after the Covenant shooter. He spoke out against the trans community on some stuff, and then he decided to be on the right a bit. But I think everything that he would talk about would be in relation to the trans community still, and those takes. I guess I didn't follow Kelly religiously, but I don't think I ever saw him talk about fiscal responsibility and things like that are I think everything was still related to how the trans community saw the world, etc. So eventually Kelly realized that people would still say that he didn't have a real vagina, which the first time I saw Kelly was before his turn to the right, or alleged turn to the right, and he was talking about how his fake vagina was better than a real woman's vagina. He wouldn't use the phrase real woman, but to genuine vagina, because I don't know, he paid for it or something crazy like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I always had suspicious eyes toward Kelly. But once he realized that people would still call him a male, and a trans identifying male, Tim, and they would still use phrases like, I think he would even, maybe he'd say that he knows that he's not a biological woman, but he's still, you know, he would have like a run around with that too. Like he get offended with all that stuff. And he was really offended that people would say that he couldn't be a mother, that he couldn't be a mother one day. He was really offended by that. And that the idea that we wouldn't accept him celebrating motherhood and Mother's Day. Now, frankly, if you want to celebrate Mother's Day, you don't even have to have kids. You can buy yourself a card and claim Happy Mother's Day, and it could not be true, and you can still want to celebrate it, and no one can stop you. But as far as everyone like knowing what's going on and accepting it, that's a different story. So then Kelly was like, I was wrong, and I apologize to trans community. The right sucks. So I don't know what Kelly's doing these days. I think maybe I blocked Kelly because I haven't seen Kelly in my feed for a minute, but I don't know. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that the term biological male, female, which I don't think you should have to say those things because they are redundant. Like if you're a woman, it should go without saying that we are talking about biology. But there are people who are upset if a man who's born a man, if you won't say that he's a mother. Those people do exist. I'm not saying that's everybody in the trans community. I'm not even saying that maybe a lot of people, but there are people with big platforms that say such things. So I just wanted to lend some clarification, or just some, I guess, more of a testimony.
Say that an adoptive mom and a biological mom have precisely the same definition. They don't. They're underneath a subset of category called motherhood. That motherhood sometimes involves birth, sometimes it does not, but it certainly involves being a female.
What do you think about the distinction between cis women and trans women?
Explain.
Well, you're saying that a more inclusive usage of the word mother isn't particularly offensive because we also have biological mother.
Yes.
We've offered the term cis woman, and even biological woman or assigned female at birth. We've offered a variety of terms that properly categorize people.
Again, you cannot extend the term woman to apply to a biological male. Every category has an endpoint. If there are only two categories, male and female, and you say that female now is in this category, there are no definitions. There are no definitions. I mean, to paraphrase my friend Matt Walsh, I'm going to need you to explain what a woman is without reference to the word woman. We can go on all day like this, but...
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily circular to say that a woman is someone who exhibits womanhood.
Yes, it is.
And that...
It's definitionally circular.
Well...
That's like saying a hand is something that fundamentally shows handhood.
Well, what I have
a tree is something that demonstrates the qualities of treehood. What new actual definitional content have you added to the word?
I can define womanhood for you, which is a set of characteristics associated with females, and a woman as someone who exhibits said womanhood.
Okay, well, you have just used the word female and woman to define each other. So you say a woman is a female, but not a biological female. A female is a woman, and a woman is a female. But at no point have you added any new content.
No, I said a woman is someone who exhibits womanhood, and womanhood is a set of characteristics.
I think you forgot he said female.
Mean anything?
Why does it not mean
the reason
anything?
It doesn't mean okay. Again, a dog is a thing that exhibits the characteristics of doghood. It's a set of characteristics characterized by being a dog. I've added no content to that. If you have no idea what a dog is, you still have no idea what a dog is.
There are plenty of labels that refer to concepts. This is not a new thing.
It's not a label referring to a concept. It's a label that's referring to the same word as the concept. You can't do that. It's fundamentally circular.
To the same word. I'm saying that womanhood.
You have not defined even womanhood. You said a set of characteristics that applies to females, and then you're applying it to males. So clearly, this is nonsensical. I'm sorry that it doesn't. I'm sorry that your attempts to worm a definition into nonsense are not succeeding. But like, I can't make that fit into logic because it doesn't. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So back to the cis comment, like he asked him like about trans women and cis women. If someone brings up the term cis to you, you can just reply with, "Oh, I don't follow that religion." Go- and just I guess you could wait for them to respond, or just go about your business. Because it's a mentality. And I don't accept I don't accept the gender identity thing. So if you don't accept it, then you can't accept the premise of being a cis person, because you have to, if you don't know what cis is supposed to mean, it means like people would assume that I would be a cis woman because I'm a woman, biological woman, and I identify as a woman. So my uh body correlates with my gender identity. However, I'm just a woman. I don't identify as a woman. Therefore, I'm not cis, because I don't believe it has anything to do with identity. I just am. So next time someone says that you're cis, just say, I don't follow that religion. And because they can't force that. I mean, people will try, I guess. Um, but it's a belief. It's a belief that you don't share. So if you were a Christian, you wouldn't accept someone calling you Muslim, would you? So give you that 2 cents, that piece of advice. So again, it's so weird that people haven't thought of like some kind of way to really explain it. And I've seen people try to come up with more sophisticated ways of having a definition of what is a woman, but it still has some kind of female qualities attached to it. So I think the reason why people are so gung-ho about just like still using the circular argument is because we all know what a woman is. And even as they repeat, excuse me, that a woman is someone who has the characteristics of womanhood, and to them, they know what that means physically. And in other aspects, those are stereotypes that maybe a lot of women share, not all women share. Like I've heard trans people explain it to me as like, well, they like dresses and makeup and long hair and heels and just really stereotypical things. I'm like, I know women who hate wearing dresses and high-heeled shoes and wouldn't be caught down in them and other things like that. So that's definitely not what makes a woman, but there are particular stereotypes that women like to engage in it. But as far as our physical characteristics, they tend, I mean, women, our bodies are vastly different between each other, but breasts and other ways that they develop because of our biology. And so but they'll argue that you don't have to take any hormones or do anything like that to be a woman. You just have to identify. And those, those things don't, at some point you have to have some kind of cutoff, but they don't want to exclude anyone from their journey of being a woman. Now there's some people who are trans are like, no, I went through all this stuff. Like you can't just show up in, a Letterman's jacket and be all like a dude and be like, yeah, I'm a woman. Like like you have to put in the work, as some of them will say, but there's no amount of work that can make you change what's rooted from conception. There's nothing that'll really change that. So it is really about, I don't think he meant to say female when he was trying to explain it. But it really is that. It really is that these different characteristics that will evolve from that we associate with womanhood are about biology. So people know it inherently, and that's why they can't really lie about it. They're trying, but it's kind of like they'll, to a degree, try to tell the truth about it, not realizing that they are, to a large extent, excluding themselves. Because that, I don't know if that person thought of themselves as trans, but I'm kind of looked like that was the goal. But you don't look it. There's one video that Matt Walsh shared the other day of this person who was sitting down at these different restaurants. They kept filming different people calling him sir, and then he get upset at the waiter, and then he'd call the manager and be like, they keep calling me sir, like, and they're like, I know maybe they didn't mean to do it, but it just hurts me every time they do it. And that's terrible if you feel that way. I don't think that's worthy of complaining to the waiters about all your internal feelings like that, because one, you are a sir, and you should you can feel however you feel, but once you go on that journey to become trans, you are bringing whatever internal struggles you have externally, and no one has an obligation to go along with it. So before you start pumping yourself full of hormones and, changing your wardrobe and growing out your hair and chopping yourself up, you might want to consider, if no one abides by your rules, will you still be happy? If all people will ever see you as is a cross-dresser, will you be okay because you followed your path? And if that answer is yes, then I guess feel free to go destroy your body. But if you could find a way to be at peace with all that vocal opposition in the world, I don't understand why you couldn't find a way to be okay, or at least cope, just being in the body that you're, well, I guess presenting as a way that your body kind of naturally presents. Because I was going to say be in the body you're born in, but it's always going to be the body you were born in, no matter what you do to it. That's where I'm going to end it for today. I didn't get to the Kim Reynolds DeSantis thing, and but I will try to share that tomorrow. Tomorrow I plan it to be my last live for the week. I don't know if I will have some other videos like posted for you guys to watch at some other point. That'll be new to see where my time is. Because this weekend I am going to be in Motor City Comic Con. And so if you're in the Metro Detroit area, feel free to come, and I'll be the very last artist alley, and to get a book. I do write books. I have 17 that are published. And so go ahead and check those out. One of my books is, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. It talks about theology, obviously, but it talks about rights. It talks about science. And I got a really nice comment today from a post from someone who was a pro-choice, and I guess still pro-choice. But I want to read it really quick. I just thought it was really really nice. If you haven't read the post, I think it's a pretty good post. But I posted it earlier today on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram. It's pretty much everywhere. But it said, wow, super interesting. As a pro-choice advocate, I absolutely love hearing your opinions on the matter. It makes me think about the other things when it's brought up. When it's brought up as an issue of God and abstinence, pro-lifers really lose me 1000%. This is how we should discuss the situation. I'm still pro-choice after all that, LOL, but I really appreciate your point of view. It does make a lot of sense. So, you're not, I've been able to convince some people, which makes me happy. I'm aware that I will not be able to convince everyone, and you can't always convince everyone of something. Sometimes when there's something abhorrent going on, some people you just kind of have to defeat and eventually outnumber. And you obviously didn't convince everybody that slavery is wrong before the end of the Civil War. So sometimes you just got to fight through it, and maybe not physically fight, but politically or whatever. But I mentioned this comment, I guess, at that point in time, because I do talk about God and other things like that, but I think there's a good balance that you can really strike up. if you're going to be like, oh, I'm pro-life because I'm Catholic, people don't register that. That doesn't make sense to them. Or they just see like, oh, your God said, oh, okay, flying spaghetti monster in the sky, and they just really dismiss it. And so I think the important thing to do is if like you might say, well, God says this about it and or whatever, or well, that's a good enough reason, really, if you believe that God is real and the ultimate authority, period. And whether people accept it or not, that's a good reason. However, people won't respond to that a lot of if they don't see God as the authority. And you may say, well, I'm a Christian, I'm Catholic, or whatever. To you, that might make sense as you're because you're thinking out your values and what they teach about inherent value, etc. Blah blah blah. Other people are just hearing your Bible thumper, and you're like a slave. You have a mental slave mentality to that religion, and you can't think for yourself. And they instill that within you. So it's important to be able to express the importance of your values very clearly. And so that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book. Of course, God is blatantly against abortion, because I wanted to debunk a lot of things that people say about the Bible when they try to twist it, like, oh, God killed his kid. Yes, people say stuff like that. So I address stuff like that, but I also address many other things. So the post that I made that this person responded to that they thought was so well thought out, or many posts that I have that don't mention God at all, the values are still the same, even if you don't hear me quote a scripture. And so that I do explain in the book Beyond Theology why many of the things that I believe make sense even to non-believers, and the importance of those ethics playing out. So and I make arguments. The argument that I made that they responded to was kind of new. I hadn't really no, it's I guess I've been saying it for a while, but I haven't written it down anywhere. Like I've been telling a couple people about that, but this is the first time I like put it somewhere. And but I do have other sort of examples like that in the book. So it's well rounded. It's not just it is very theology focused, but there's a lot to it. So I recommend people checking it out. I don't know if my baby sister is still in the comments, but she actually designed the cover for me she made the hand of God reaching out to the baby. She did a really great job here. Again, she'll have a booth right next to me at Motor City. She has an art showing on December the 2nd. And so if you're going to be like in Michigan, I encourage you guys to check out her stuff. And actually, even if you're not in the state, you guys can still order stuff online. So her website is tinasexportrait.com. But to find out more about my books, because I have 2 nonfiction books and the rest are like all kinds of different stuff. I got historical fiction, fantasy. I got children's chapter books, things for young adults and new adults, etc. If you go to blacktnews.com and go to the merchandise page, there's a banner that will take you to my book website, and you can learn more about my titles there. You guys can also go to you can go to Amazon and search my name, Christina L. Barr. You can follow me on Amazon and check out my stuff. Also go to my website, check out different merch there. And if you do like what I do here, I do encourage you to leave a donation at the website, blacktnews.com/donate. Because it does cost to stream. It does cost to run my website and all those things. So if you can support in that kind of way, I do appreciate it very, very, very much. There should be a link in the description that should take you to the support page on the website. God bless you guys. And I will see you tomorrow. And again, it'll probably be my last live stream of the week. And because I'm really busy, got to get ready for that convention. So, God bless you.